This is Patrick Sarge Murray here for Travel to Learn, and we're here at the Children's Aquarium in Fair Park in Dallas, Texas. It's a rather small aquarium, but interestingly it's part of the Dallas Zoo system. So let's go inside and check out what's all inside on display in this historic building, shall we? Notice the carved deco stylized seahorse reliefs, slightly yet gradually recessed, as well as some decent deco scrollwork up top. The columns are also very much in the Art Deco style. Truly, this is one of the most unique aquarium exteriors of any public aquarium I've visited. It's awesome. One of the first things we see once we enter the place and turn into the east wing is this small tank with turtles. They all seem to be red-eared sliders, which are found in Texas as well as throughout much of the US. What baffles me, though, is what this peacock bass is doing here. It's one of the largest species of cichlids found in the Western Hemisphere, if not the largest, but it's native to the Amazon system. Still, it's always a pleasure to see this species. Naturally, this being an aquarium in Dallas, they had to show an obligatory tank of a sample of Trinity River system fish, such as spotted gar, long-nosed gar, as well as a couple of different kinds of bluegill. Now this is cool. It would not be the first public aquarium in Texas without a tank devoted to Texas cichlids, specifically Heractes cyanoguttatus. This is the only cichlid native to North America, and like a lot of its Latin American cousins that are also former members of genus Cyclosoma, it too is fairly aggressive. Per its other common name of Rio Grande perch, you'll find this species in the southern drainage of this river near Brownsville, as well as on the other side in northeastern Mexico. That being said, it's also an invasive species and has thus invaded part of the San Antonio River, believe it or not. Interestingly, there is also a school of crappie in this tank, they being in the same taxonomical order of cichlids, which is Perciformis. Here is a decent piranha tank, to be sure, but what intrigued me is that there were a couple other Amazon River fish, such as these examples of pink-tailed chalceus. This species, in fact, merited a second, closer look. All symbolism aside, this tank of black-billed cichlids is arguably even more impressive than the Texas cichlid tank. It's certainly more colorful. This species, whose scientific name is Vieja maculacauda, is found throughout much of Central America, from southern Mexico down to Panama. Here is another Amazon tank. The obvious show stealer here is the electric eel. Two of them, in fact. But that's not all. Elsewhere, you'll see some fish one will readily find in home aquariums throughout the land. For one, we see some gold tetras. For another, we see some silver angelfish. The small red ones you see swimming around are serpae tetras. Over here are a few more silver angelfish. And over here, some silver dollars. Just to make sure the others aren't short-shrifted, here's a closer look at some of the serpae tetras. They also have a tank here with several species of Australian rainbow fish and, more importantly, Australian lungfish, which are way cooler than lungfish found elsewhere. Here's another look at the Australian lungfish. What makes them so cool? Well, notice those big, fleshy, lobed fins. Those are positively classic fins of a lobe-finned fish, something right out of the late Paleozoic era. It would be as if they made a new model of car today with tail fins and a wraparound windshield, just like they did back in the 1950s. Yes, no doubt about it, this species is truly a living throwback. Here in the middle of the building, right near the main entrance, we see a nice touch pool with lots of interesting species. Check out this slipper lobster. Quite unusual for a touch pool, as any experienced aquarium goer will tell you. Here is a chocolate chip general starfish. Keep those guys away from the anemones. Here we see a type of pencil sea urchin. They're given that name on account of their thicker, blunter spines than the typical sea urchins. Speaking of anemones, we see a couple of them right here, one of which appears to be a curlicue type. Looks like this hermit crab is trying to make a break for it. But let's see the slipper lobster again. This is such a rare thing to see in an aquarium touch pool. That's why it's irresistible to see a second time. It's not every day that one sees a Quran angelfish in its full-fledged adult glory as opposed to just seeing juveniles. And just as we say that, this spotted pufferfish wants to horn in. And to be sure, it's a striking species that deserves a bit of camera time as well. One of the more surprising things here in the western wing of the aquarium was this ornate wobbegong shark. Oh sure, you'll find them at some other aquaria, but it's rare to see one from this sort of angle. It's a nice little treat. Wobbegongs are actually a type of carpet shark, which describes a taxonomical order of shark that includes families of nurse sharks, zebra sharks, even whale sharks. Nice pattern in this species though, no? Here's a nice brackish water tank. Featured here are two main species. For one, the Scatophagus argus, sometimes called a scat for short and also known as an argus fish. Elsewhere we see schools of monos, which is an abbreviation of its genus, Monodactylus, or one finger in Greek. A lobster with no claws? Yes, they very much exist, and this spiny lobster is proof. Instead of their famous claws, this species has long spine-like appendages instead. Here we have an epaulet shark, which obviously gets its name from the large black spot just behind its gills. Personally, I've always thought they're rather cute, and indeed they've been known to scavenge food at divers' feet, which shows you how docile they are as well. And over here in the corner we have some sort of species of cat shark, also very interesting. In this tank on the very end of the western wing, on one side we see a couple of white-tipped reef sharks. And on the other end, a nice-sized specimen of Atlantic nurse shark. You just know that there had to be a decent Indo-Pacific reef tank here. Already we see some surgeonfish, such as powder blue surgeonfish, a yellow tang, and blue hippo tangs. Scrolling over here, we see a maroon clownfish tending to a carpet anemone. Up here we see another yellow tang. Looking more closely, we have found a juvenile yellowtail chorus wrasse. Looking closely elsewhere, we see some Bangai cardinalfish. And elsewhere again, we find a bicolored dottyback. The beauty in these reef tanks is always in the details. These can't help but catch the eye. Walking batfish. It's a type of benthic fish, meaning that it is adapted to living at the lowest level of a given area of water. This species, within genus Aquacephalus, ranges from Florida on down to Brazil. Sure, just about every aquarium has moray eels, but not everyone has this kind. To my mind, the tessellated moray eel has one of the neatest patterns of any moray around. This very tank alone is worth paying the price of admission to see. First, we have pineapple fish, which are always a treat to see, and one sees them so rarely. But even beyond that, we have this, the chambered friggin' nautilus. So few aquariums have them. I can count on only one hand how many places I have seen where these are on display and would have a finger or two left over. They are essentially living fossils, the only surviving relative of the coiled nautiloids and the ammonites from the Paleozoic and Mesozoic eras respectively. The chambers they have in the coil of their shell allow for them to regulate the balance of air and water so they can go up and down at will, and also maintain neutral buoyancy like we're seeing with these two specimens here. It's a fascinating thing to watch. I could spend all day watching these guys in a tank like this. Less than 10 years ago, they expanded the children's aquarium to include this exhibit, which includes this bat ray touch pool. Oh sure, they bill them as quote-unquote stingrays, but anyone who knows anything about rays can tell you these are anything but that. Nope, these are bat rays, folks, and they're far more docile than their stingray cousins. I got my first bat ray encounter at a touch pool when I was a 9-year-old boy, and it was such a thrill at the time. It's nice to know kids have that same sort of option here as well. At the other end of the bat ray pool, you can step down to view them at this level. Nice touch. Of course, right next to the bat ray pool is this massive tank with all sorts of neat stuff. Bonnethead sharks for one, and some Atlantic spadefish for another. Also included are blacktip sharks. Here, a cobia swims by us. Nice to see that they gave this injured sea turtle a good home. No way he or she could survive in the wild with those compromised fins. Hang around long enough and this map pufferfish will swim by. As will this zebra shark, which I thought was the neatest shark in the tank. As Brent Musburger would say, there's that shark again. Well folks, that's all the time we have right now. We didn't show you everything, but we gave you a pretty good taste of all the really neat aquatic life they have on display here. The Children's Aquarium of the Dallas Zoo may be small, but it sure packs a punch. If you're here exploring the Fair Park, and you should, because it's worth coming to Dallas just to be able to explore all the great architecture they have to show here at Fair Park. And while you're doing that, come here to the Children's Aquarium to see some of the really unique aquatic life they have here. I mean, goodness, if the chambered nautiluses aren't enough to get you over here, goodness knows what is. So, like we said, that's all we have for right now. Keep checking back for more episodes, and in the meantime, keep exploring, keep discovering, keep growing, and keep learning. This is Patrick Sarge Murray for Travel to Learn, signing off.